They call it the City of Angels. Funny, in my 30 years here, I haven't seen a single one. What happened to Henry was a true crime. And if there's one man who deserves to find out the truth, it's his son.
Activision's latest game is True Crime: Streets of LA. It's available now for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. In the game, you play the role of Nick Kang, a loose cannon cop who works alone, and several other action movie cliches. The game basically kind of sets itself up with the plot of a kind of B-rate generic feeling action movie, and backs that up with gameplay that covers ground in driving, martial arts, and gunplay, as well as some stealth thrown in here and there. The game basically does a good job of keeping it together, but by and large, all the portions of the gameplay feel a little sloppy. The story doesn't really back it up, and Nick Kang himself just is kind of annoying and smarmy from the get-go. So as a result, the game is basically worth a rental, but maybe not much more than that. The most impressive portion of True Crime is that the game models like 240 square miles of Los Angeles. It's pretty accurate. You might not find your local fast food joint, and your apartment might have been turned into like a field or something. But by and large, it's got some landmarks here and there, and the street layout is pretty accurate. It's impressive to see things like freeway interchanges look like the real freeway interchanges and stuff like that. With that much ground to cover, you'll be doing a lot of driving in the game. There aren't really too many driving missions in the game, but you will be tailing suspects as well as trying to lose tails yourself. In addition to that, you'll have to race to certain locations to get there before trouble strikes. And basically the game keeps you on a pretty tight leash. You're always given an objective, a place to go, and there really isn't too much to do outside of that. So a lot of that 240 square miles really kind of goes to waste unless you're really just interested in driving around and looking at the recreation of the city. The driving mechanics itself are a little clunky at times. The steering feels a little stiff. Different cars will of course handle differently, and you can also get upgrades along the way through training. And these upgrades include the ability to burn out for speed boosts. You can come to sliding stops, and you also unlock cars as you go. As a gritty Los Angeles cop, Nick Kang is definitely going to have to be packing some heat, so there's a lot of gunplay in the game as well. Nick's weapon of choice are a pair of pistols, and like the cars, you'll upgrade and unlock new weapons as you go. You can also pick up weapons from enemies after you take them out, which is a nice touch because some of them will drop, AK-47s and stuff like that, so you'll be dual wielding like a pair of rifles and really kind of mowing people down. The aiming system in the game isn't really terribly well thought out. It really kind of takes a long time to lock onto people, though you will get an upgrade that actually makes that lock-on process a lot faster, and another one that makes reloading almost instantaneous. So you can really just kind of lay into the fire button once you've acquired these upgrades, and that's really the key to the game, is just laying waste to stuff as fast as possible. The gunfighting is almost automatic in that sense. You can choose to take people out with a neutralizing shot to the shoulder, but by and large, when you're in the missions, you really don't have to make that choice. You can just kind of fill everybody full of lead, and that's that. The third facet of True Crime's gameplay is unarmed combat, and you'll probably encounter this one most of all. Nick Kang is a martial artist of sorts, and you have a punch, kick, and jump kick button at your disposal when you're fighting like this. A lot of the instances of unarmed combat take place indoors, and in these sections you actually can't control the camera, which, in a nutshell is really dumb, because you really kind of miss out on a lot of the action. You'll have guys kind of walking up at you from a spot where you can't see them, and they'll get an attack in because of that advantage. So that's super annoying. Like the other facets, you can get upgrades, and these upgrades actually, make the fighting system a lot easier to deal with. The basic punches and kicks really don't help that much, and they really don't do very much damage. But eventually you'll unlock additional grapples, some combo attacks, the ability to hit people when they're down, including dropping like a wrestling-style elbow on them, which is a nice touch, and other such moves. The game's pretty good about leading you from mission to mission, but there are random crimes that occur when you're out on the streets without a timed objective. And basically, what this is the police radio will come on and they'll say, hey, we got a speeder, his nickname's the Bandit, he's never been caught. There's a lot of little kind of jokes like that in there, a little Smokey and the Bandit reference. And the random crimes are basically where you kind of decide your good cop, bad cop status. Basically, a meter keeps track of, whether you're a good cop or a bad cop. And basically, the difference between being a good cop and a bad cop is not killing people. So, you take people out with neutralizing shots, or, you arrest people instead of just smoking them, stuff like that. So you'll encounter a street fight. You can solve most of these crimes by just kind of running people over. You just have to make sure you're not going so fast that you kill them, but you just hit them, it'll knock them unconscious, crime solved. Some of the crooks will escalate stuff, there'll be armed robberies and people like that, you have to take out. And there, if you want to be a good cop, you have to shoot them in the arm to take them out as opposed to just gunning them down. You can play the game as a good cop or a bad cop, and the story will kind of branch slightly differently based on your choices, and you'll get different endings. There's 3 endings in total. The storyline in True Crime basically feels kind of ripped out of a kind of direct-to-cable version of an action movie. Basically, you're Nick Kang, this loose cannon cop. They are sure to mention that he's a loose cannon. They're sure to mention that he likes to work alone. He treats his female partner with a whole lot of disrespect right off the get-go, kind of asking her to go get him a coffee and that sort of thing. So he's just kind of a jerk. It's real easy to see that they were maybe kind of going for that kind of loose cannon, Martin Riggs, Lethal Weapon sort of thing. But, the guy's dialogue just doesn't come across with any sort of charm at all. And he really just is kind of a jackass. He's a pretty unlikable character from start to finish.
You telling me you know someone who can ID this guy?
Maybe. An arms dealer out in Venice Beach, a real piece of work. Done business with Russians for years. If there's trouble, then he's in it.
Whoa, pal. I'm running this up now, and you don't so much as take a leak unless I say so.
Speaking of which, Masterson, your fly's open.
Your mission in the game is to get close to the triads, which are shaking down a bunch of local businesses, burning down lots of buildings and things like that. But that mission quickly expands as you kind of get the depth of the operation. You'll encounter money laundering, kind of ex-KGB guys, and lots of different facets as the story just kind of spins out of control to include the FBI, who in classic, kind of action movie cliche fashion, you have this, FBI guy kind of stepping in on your jurisdiction and being kind of a jerk and just saying things like Kang, and it's really kind of been done before, and it really feels pretty unoriginal here. The game also takes a pretty brief sojourn into this really weird territory. I won't give too much of it away. You can find a movie up on the site that kind of shows this, but at one point you're fighting zombies, which for a game that's kind of all about gritty cop stuff, to really kind of have just 20 minutes of the game that kind of just goes in this entirely different direction, and then yet comes right back and there you are just tailing another suspect and continuing on with the story like nothing ever happened. It's really weird and it really feels out of place. Overall, the story just feels really disjointed and kind of hops from place to place with little rhyme or reason. What really does kind of save True Crime in a lot of ways is its presentation. Graphically, the game really does look fantastic. It's available for all 3 platforms, and as you might expect, the Xbox version does look the cleanest, but all 3 versions of the game really do look great. You'll see some little things here and there. The lip syncing doesn't look particularly terrific, and there's some instances of clipping here and there, or maybe when you're trying to arrest a suspect, your arms might not be right on his arms as you're cuffing the guy. And these little things are definitely noticeable and definitely do take away from the appearance. But by and large, the city just looks fantastic. Everything moves at a pretty smooth frame rate, and kind of the speed keeps up at a nice high speed. You can really just get flying up the streets, and it'll still load in the city as you're going just fine. And the indoor environments break apart really nicely. As you're fighting, you're grappling and throwing people into shelves and up against cars, and you just see stuff kind of just blow up all around you, and that's pretty cool. With the game going for such a cinematic presentation and really kind of playing out its story as if it were a movie, soundtrack really kind of comes into play in a big way in most movies, and True Crime really does kind of hit that right on the head. The game contains over 50 tracks. Most of it is rap, West Coast rap specifically. So you have artists like the West Side Connection, the DOC, Snoop Dogg, Lil Eazy-E, which is Eazy-E's E40's son, and a handful of other artists, E40, kind of making up the soundtrack. And it really fits the tempo and the action of the game really well. And if you hate rap music, you're obviously gonna not like most of the soundtrack. There are a few older funk tracks, Parliament's on there, and a couple tracks from Megadeth, and there's a song from Taproot on there. So it's not all rap, but by and large, if you have a strong hatred for rap, then hopefully you have an Xbox and you can use the custom soundtrack option to get rid of that stuff. But it does fit the game really well, and is definitely a strength for the game. The rest of the sound is pretty top-notch stuff. You hear the squealing of tires, the firing of guns, all that stuff sounds pretty good. The voice work, with the exception of the lead character, who is pretty much terrible from start to finish, the voice work in the game is really well done. Christopher Walken kind of bookends the game as a narrator. He plays an older, near-retirement cop who knew Nick Kang's father. So he kind of sets the story up and closes the story out. It actually would have been a nice touch to see more Christopher Walken in there, because he really does a fine job at kind of bookending the story. So if maybe he had been would come on in between chapters of the story and kind of move things along, I think that would have actually helped to make the story kind of flow a little better. But as it is, the plot is pretty disjointed without any sort of connective tissue.
Nah, not like Nick. First, his mother died. She was a dear soul. Then, his father, Henry, got fingered in a drug trafficking scandal.
So throughout its development, True Crime has been compared to the Grand Theft Auto series, numerous times. But in the end, the game really has more in common with Sony's PlayStation 2 game, The Getaway. They both kind of go after that kind of Grand Theft Auto free roaming thing, but neither of them really capitalize on that very well. They're both games that are pretty linear, even though True Crime does branch in a couple spots. You can take some alternate missions. They both, the game pretty much ends up in the same place regardless of that, and that more factors into which ending you'll get. So it's easy to call True Crime a better game than The Getaway, though it does kind of share some of the same problems as that game. And in the end, it's difficult to recommend for more than a rental. It's not a bad game. In fact, it's a good game. But it has too many little problems that really kind of add up over time, and the crazy plot really just kind of gets in the way of the whole thing as well.